Hi, thanks for joining me today. I wanted to talk today about ancestral healing, some parts of my own journey, but ancestral healing in general, and how it is, in many ways, using alchemy and for transformation and to rebuild our lives from using solid foundations instead of so many of the foundations we were taught as we were growing up. People did their best, of course, for the most part, but what they were taught. And but we get to a place in our lives and realize that's not the truth. That's not how it works. That's not how I want to live and to rebuild from there. So I will proceed. And this topic had come to mind the last week or two because of the star energies that we've been having that have been gearing up for this week and next week in July, where there's these big changes, big shifts and changes in the outer stars, what they call the planets or the wandering stars that don't change as often as some of the internal ones. They don't change as often as the sun and the moon, and a lot of these are coming into an alignment. So it's this week is a pattern of, it's called the Barbo basket. Stars are connecting, four different wandering stars or planets are connecting in kind of like a basket shape, and they're all at about the same 4-degree pattern in each of their things. So I'll just read those a little bit. I'm not going to go into a lot of astrology or anything, but so this involves Jupiter, which is in Leo, Uranus, which is in Gemini, Neptune, which is in the constellation of Aries, and Pluto, which is in Aquarius, at precisely the 4 degrees of each of their signs. And this pattern only occurs once every 248 years. Although some of those within that happen more often, but the full large pattern only happens 248 years. So no one alive now that has had this. And it's been said that this represents structural shifts in collective consciousness, gradual evolution, and the quiet rewriting of long-term timelines. And you might notice a subtle internal reorganization, getting clarity on old chapters of your life that are permanently closing, and what the new future, your new future for you will be moving forward. And I have felt these shifts coming throughout the last year, definitely. Things were building up, and I could see as each phase of different things I went through in my life, they were definitely rebuilding foundations, releasing, continuing to release ancestral patterns, releasing trauma that was stored in my body still, releasing just things I learned and learning to look at things in a new perspective. And a big thing was, for me, I was not feeling good, had recurrent bad colds it recurred 3 different times, or from the 1st of November through finally the end of March. I was over it. But I knew, I could tell as this was going what it was doing for me, because I didn't feel so good most of the time. And I had to take it really easy. I had to just sit a lot, or rest, or take naps more, and things for a long period of time. And what it did was reset my nervous system, so that from the traumas I was in as a little child, where I first experienced the fight or flight, I stayed in those old patterns most of my life, in low grade patterns of fight or flight. And so I'm still in those. And even though I've done a lot of biofield work, and I worked on resetting the nervous system, and that it had reset, but then jumped back into it again. Not as high, but it was still there, where it was so much easier to be in that fight or flight pattern of quicker breathing, of reacting, thinking, things like that. And so this long-term having a cold through much of the winter made me rest, and I paid attention to my breathing. I did other energy things that would help keep my nervous system low and not in a fight or flight pattern. And so even that was working so much for my good. And then I come out of spring, and you can tell, just like the moon waxes and wanes, these energies that we've had this week have been waxing for change also, is what I'm trying to say. And so I wanted to talk about ancestral healing and how that is a big part of the alchemy in our lives that we can use to rebuild our lives, and needs to be part of our life to continue moving forward to where we want to be, not in the same old patterns that keep us stuck in life, or getting the same pattern. I've often heard what's the word? A fool is someone who keeps repeating the same patterns, thinking of something differently. Or it's also said, don't keep hitting your head against a brick wall, because hitting yourself against a brick wall is continuing to do the same thing the same way. It doesn't work. And so anyway, one of the stories I wanted to talk about today was a brick wall that I rebuilt. And I talk about it in my book, Ancestral River. And I was going to read a portion of that today. And this chapter, Alchemy. As I thank the universe for the puppy that had recently joined our home unexpectedly, Gabriel said it was my idea, Gabriel meaning my guardian angel. I wanted you to have this joy. But after the puppy barked and cried for 5 long nights, I wasn't feeling joy. I was only having lack of sleep. So old patterns were flaring: blame, fear of rejection, feeling that I wasn't enough. And my husband said, I think we're supposed to learn something from the puppy. I was having difficulty accepting the situation as good. And I said, well, what's that? What is it we're supposed to learn? And he says, the universe holds us like we hold the puppy. She's safe, loved, and has everything she needs, but she's scared. She's reacting with her mind. And I said, well, she doesn't know all these things were for her highest good. Just like I was having trouble accepting these things as my highest good of having a puppy. And let's see. Okay, sorry. So preparing for holiday travel, I said to my husband, I made a lot of progress in clearing blocks and restoring pathways, but being with family members often brings back old patterns of fear of being separated, wanting their approval. I yearn for restoration. I want to be remade, restored. And my husband said, universal spirit tells us to create what we want. Try alchemy. Tear down all the components of your relationships with your family and rebuild it based on how you want to be. Redefine the relationship and who you are as if you're meeting them for the first time. And I said, well, I'm not sure I can. But early the next morning, I wasn't quite awake, but I wasn't dreaming either. And I watched myself tearing down a brick wall in front of me. My family stood on the other side of the brick wall. When the wall was down, I saw that the foundation was cracked and broken. So I tore it out too, remembering that the times when my dad had taught me how to lay brick. He was a bricklayer. He took me to work with him at times. And he would set a brick and mortar along a wall near where he was working and run a string from corner to corner, marking where the plumb line where the brick needed to be. He'd show me how to put mortar on the brick and how to place it on the row, and then he'd go back to his own wall and work. And in half an hour or so, he'd come back and check my work and point out any problems, tear it all back down to wherever the problem started, and show me how to do it again. And so I took a breath. It was time to rebuild this wall. This time, I started with a foundation of truth. I didn't know when the first wall was built. Like many of us in our lives, right? We just go with what we're told. For the new foundation, I used the wisdom represented in my spiritual chakras, 9 through 12. I knew I am spirit and that my spirit is designed to lead my mind. I consciously choose to live as spirit beings. I live in harmony with the abundance of the universe and receive all things as good as part of the oneness. I express my spirit's desires for the highest good of all. The string I used to measure the height of each row was spiritual 2, chakra 8, that I align my mind to hear my spirit. In every present moment, I have the choice between action or reaction. With a solid foundation in place, remember this is when I was dreaming, or you might call it lucid dreaming, where it wasn't a dream, but I sure wasn't awake either. I said I laid the first row of brick. I based it on the energy of the root chakra. The universe is always acting in my favor. I am safe and have everything I need within me. The sacral chakra was row 2. I create my own life. I value myself and know that universal spirit values me even more. Next was row 3, the solar plexus. I claim the power and authority of the universe within me as my own. I made the 4th row with love. I am loving myself and others by only sending positive thoughts and allowing each of us to live our lives as we choose. That's the heart chakra. The throat energy was next. I expressed my spirit's desires completely, and I listened to what others say without hearing through my own thoughts of lack and fear. The third eye was the 6th row. I live in every present moment, not regretting any past or worrying about the future, because all things work for my good. My wall needed an extra row. My subconscious patterns are aligned with my spirit is the row I laid. And then came the capstone, the crown. I am made of universal spirit. I respect each of my family members because they are universal spirit too. And then I stepped back to look at all my work. The wall was good. It was higher and stronger than before and had a broad foundation. But something was different. It also had brick-like arms. Above the arms, the wall resembled a head. The wall was me. And I said to the oneness, to those in the oneness, thank you, Dad. I receive myself as good. I receive my family as good. All is made of universal spirit. All is good. And reaching out, I held my family members in a bubble of love and embraced each member with love. And in rebuilding those relationships, I rebuilt myself. So that's my story of alchemy and the transformation it can bring in your life. And that's what these energies are about this week. All these changes that have been working as we have come through the last several months or the last year. For all of us, you may have gone through a lot of difficult times. I know at times 2025 was really difficult, and you probably felt that too. And even so, it's like time keeps marching on with one more difficult thing after another difficult thing. And now we're here. I don't think the difficult things will necessarily stop, but these have been preparing us. So as the energies shift and as we shift, we can move forward from here in much more with a broad foundation, right? With level rows that are built to the plumb line, that are based on truth, that are based on spirit, that are not just based on how we perceived the world when we were children because of all that we were taught. And I know many of you have been, like me, on rebuilding our thoughts, or rebuilding our beliefs in different things from childhood on, as we look at different things that are happening in the world, and then what it really means, and what's, as much as we can tell, what's really going on, or what's the background behind things. Not just accepting, but looking into and seeing how they align together, and if it's based on truth, to as much as we can consider. And a lot of times that rebuilding process, it's like a pendulum that swings back and forth. I like to think of it like this: as I was a child, you know, in those beliefs, and it was more centered on this side. And then as I came out of those beliefs, and I came out of the religion of any kind, and into the belief, more of the knowing I have now, that we're all made of spirit, and how spirit guides me in every way, and how that all differs from the beliefs I used to have as a little child. And then the pendulum swung way over here. And then the last few years, it's finding its balance in the middle, in some ways, I should say, so that we're balanced people, rebuild through the alchemy of tearing out the old and choosing our foundation, and continuing to make adjustments as we go through life, as we learn more and experience more, and come into more knowledge and greater standing of spiritual things. And we can gradually make this transformation in our lives that needs to be done, and will result in being happier ourselves and happier in our lives. And this transformation, the ancestral healing, is so much a part of that, because much of that foundation that we have, we don't even know about. It's all the unhelpful thought patterns that many of our ancestors held through their lives, generations of ancestors. And so whatever your pattern is, whether it's fear or control issues, wanting to control others or wanting to be controlled, or whether it's anger or unforgiveness or worry and anxiety, all sorts of these patterns that our ancestors carried. And they're part of us. They make up our spirit being. They make up our biofield. These pockets of frozen emotions that happened in their lives and that happened in our lives just block the pathway of our divine flow, and cause roadblocks and detours that present as unhelpful thought patterns, but also in reaction patterns, but also unhelpful physical illnesses, or easy ways that we might be injured easier because of the energy that has been blocked for most of our lives, or many years and many generations within our biofields and our ancestors' biofields. So ancestral healing is very much needed as part of this alchemy of transformation, to have the better life that we all want to have, the happier, more productive, more lives based on following our spirit that we're made of, following the passions and desires of our own heart, and bringing those into fruition to the world, because those are the gifts that we're meant to give. By working through the difficulties we have, or the old patterns we have, and overcoming them, then we can help others overcome them too, and adding our flavor of that information and knowledge base in around us in the world to help others overcome theirs through the next generations. And so, thank you for listening. Thank you for letting me ramble here about ancestral healing and its importance and the transformation it can bring in our lives. And I wanted to say more about the happiness too. It goes off the subject of ancestral healing. It's a pattern that I'm learning some, but I did all this ancestral healing, lots of it, and it helped tremendously. My life changed a lot. My old patterns weren't near so much present with every reaction. I was more and more able to just act instead of react and choose how I wanted to do so. But I still had this underlying heaviness that was still based in ancestral healing, because my ancestors would have had too much seriousness, too much heaviness, too much trauma through the generations, and that society holds the despair, world despair that we all have felt at different times throughout centuries and millennia when things happen. And so I came across Feng Shui, and the goal of Feng Shui is the happiness, to make our lives happy, make us happy. And I knew I had to have that. And in the last year and a half of learning Feng Shui, it's really came true, and I am happy. And as we're more and more, as our home becomes complete based on spiritual work and the 9 life areas of our lives, and as we make those physical changes in our homes to complete those homes, and according to the 9 life areas, it does the spiritual work in us at the same time. And as our home becomes nicer and more full of what we love and how we want it, and continually improving, our lives become that way too, happy and restored and full of love and happiness. And so I wish that for each of you. And for anyone that's knowing they need to make a change but not knowing where, I contact me. We can talk about ancestral healing and how that might help you, or we can talk about the Feng Shui and how oftentimes that might be the key to your other healing, by having your house in place so it supports you in all you do. Then going through all those other, the ancestral healing and all the other life changes you need to make, you can go through those so much easier and faster, because your house, you're surrounded by the chi energy that supports you in all things and holds your desires and your passions and your dreams within it. So you're constantly surrounded by those dreams and desires and your intentions for good, and with the power of universal spirit and chi all around us. And so we can talk about that too. So thank you. Please give me a thumbs up. And I appreciate you being here. And thank you again. I hope to see you next week. And we'll continue this journey together in looking at how the star energies affect us and tuning ourselves each week, which I did yesterday. That video is available if you haven't seen it. Tuning ourselves so we can integrate with these astrological energies as they change and evolve. Then we can flow through those changes and flow through our lives easier too. And then the other thoughts that I have on different topics that came up. So thank you again, and many blessings to you. Bye-bye.